In Atlanta.
Catching on an elevator with...
Start from the top.
Okay, fun fact. That was played at my wedding. And we danced to it.
I love that. That's like the one dance that I can rock. What does that have to do with anything? EFM, chicken dip.
We kind of got to rub shoulders with EFM Billionaire this week. Guy by the name of Dan Cathy. He owns a little company. You might have heard of it. It's called Chick-Fil-A.
Oh, Dan, Cathy, and I go back for years. Actually, before Lydia and I got married. We were helping out at the Passion Conference, jumped into the elevator, and the elevator stops, the door opens, and a short guy walks in with a colorful tie on and a blazer and a big lanyard and says, "Hey, how y'all doing? Okay, good to see you." And Lydia's elbowing me because apparently this guy was a big deal and I didn't know it. After we get out of the elevator, after he asked us for directions and we talked a little bit, Lydia says, "Don't you know who that is?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea. Who is that?" "That's Dan Cathy, the CEO of Chick-Fil-A." And I'm like, "What is Chick-Fil-A?" She's like, "The wedding's off. Forget it."
Yeah,
Right.
You're not from around here, are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, McGreevy, I love that now we know where all the wisdom bombs that we heard from him came from. You met him all those years ago. You're the commonly, that's where Louis Giglio got his material, right? All the McGreevyisms.
Exactly.
the McGreevy bombs. Welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurial Family Man podcast. I am Chris Niemeyer, here with my good friends Christopher McCluskey, Jamie Slingerland, and the ever-wise Michael McGreevy. We are just four guys who are crazy about our wives. We love our kids, and we want to kill it in business. And this podcast is just a safe place to tackle those important issues that are so vital to who we are as men. And this week, we had the pleasure of meeting an EFM billionaire. Yes, truly, an EFM billionaire. Many of you know we were on the mastermind with Dan Miller, and this week, our special guest speaker to just the 20 of us was none other than the CEO of Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy. And my goodness, did we all four walk away from that call completely impressed, inspired, challenged in unique ways. And so this episode, we just want to share with you 3 life lessons learned from an EFM billionaire. Michael, can you start us off and share with us what it is that impacted you and that's actually going to help flesh out the topic of this conversation?
First of all, I just love how he started out the call. He had a Chick-fil-A cup in his hand, sipping on their latest caramel drink that's half the calories of a milkshake, and just living out his brand and selling it right there in front of us. So that was pretty awesome to see. But he was just such a laid-back guy. But one of the things that really hit me was his 3 M's. And they were not things that happened to you. They were decisions. And these 3 M's were who you make your master, who you make your mate, and what your mission in life is going to be. 3 decisions were the most important decisions of his life. That's what he learned from his father, Truett.
I love that. Yeah, I wrote that down as well, and just struck me how simple, but yet how deep and how laser focused you can be when you have those 3 critical decisions in place. And let's unpack that a little bit in terms of this first lesson. Who do you make your master? Chris, jump in. What jumped out to you in terms of what he identified as his master and the many points he mentioned about that?
I'm with McGreevy. Dan Cathy was so chill. It was just like sitting down talking to your dad or your granddad. It was a very comfortable living room kind of a conversation as he's sitting there sipping on his little drink. And he was just knocking out wisdom bomb after wisdom bomb. And what struck me was that they it wasn't like he was always spouting scripture, but they were all so grounded in a man who deeply knows who he is spiritually and who his God is, who his master is, that it was like that was the common thread throughout. If his first question and big challenge in life was, who's going to be the master of your life? There was no question who Dan's master was. Everything he does, everything he's about is for the glory of his master, for the stewarding of his master's riches, to hear his master say, well done. It just came through over and over again. The amount of wisdom that was pouring out was like a fire hose, except you were drinking from the most chill fire hose. I guess the metaphor doesn't work for me, but I was drinking so deeply of being in the presence. The cognitive piece was there, but his essence, his self was grounded in knowing whose he is. He knew who his master was. He knows that his master knows who he is. And he was just like delighted that he gets to live this life stewarding the things that have been entrusted to him for the master's glory. Yeah, no words, but that was overwhelmingly evident.
Yeah, I agree. I was just surprised at how relaxed and humble he was. In that group, we talk a lot about business, and he didn't compartmentalize the business with the faith or the family. His top values just came right out. That was super inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's gotten fired at in the media for doing a lot of things because he keeps his faith top of mind.
You said the word bold, Jamie, and another thing is popping into mind. He said, as I get older, I want to get bolder. And that just really struck me. You hear a lot of people aging and like thinking about, I'm going to take my foot off the gas. I'm going to start to relax, think about retirement, maybe do a lot less. He's thinking, I'm going to do more. I'm going to be more bold. I'm going to be in better shape. I'm going to be more focused than I've ever been before because I should be, because I've learned more, I've experienced more, I have more to offer, and my faith has grown. So he really pulls from his faith in that way too, to give him that boldness to take on these bigger and bigger dreams that he has.
Related to that, one of these areas that struck out is when he shared about this idea that God calls us into business and he calls us into the marketplace, and how as business owners, as EFM guys, we literally should be in awe of that mantle of responsibility. And there's a reverence there that as we know who our master is, he lines up and he provides for the visions that we have. And just this idea, I mean, he was so excited about being in business for a purpose and being unashamed about that. And as you know, he can be in the spotlight with the target on his back from groups that don't align with who he is and this message. But he's so unashamed about that. And I think to your point, he's bolder. He's bolder because of going after this big vision that God's put on his heart.
Boy, and that boldness did come out right alongside of this chill piece that we're talking about, because there was a great humility about him. He was not anything close to an arrogant, boastful billionaire and being bold and courageous out there, like, screaming at the front of the charge. He had, in fact, he referenced, Joshua just falling to his knees as they were preparing to go across the Jordan River and hearing from the Lord, be strong and courageous. And Cathy said, hey, if we as leaders do not need to have God say to us, be strong and courageous, then he says, we need to examine what we're challenging ourselves with. I loved that humble boldness, that tremendous awareness of his absolute dependence on God. And then God saying, yeah, so now get up off your knees and go, man.
Yes. And so much more is bubbling up as you share that story too, because one of the things he said was, if it's God's vision, then he will provide for that vision. So there's provision for God's vision. So it speaks to that dynamic of, I'm taking on something that I could never pull off in my own power and my own strength. I have to rely on God to see this through. And he will come through if it's what he's calling me to do.
The reason I walked away from that call of being such a fan of him is that I felt that presence of the way that he walks with God. It came out in his humility. And we all know the culture in his business when you go in there. We all enjoy going to Chick-Fil-A because he's built that culture. And it's not an arrogant thing, right? They serve.
Yeah, and that idea of service is going to take us to the second point, the second lesson, the second M that we learned from him, which is our mate. That decision that our mate really matters, because he talked about how he comes from an amazing heritage. Truett Cathy starting this business, and really he acknowledged a lot of the wisdom that he shared with us, the wisdom nuggets, as you call it, right? Comes from his dad. And Truett was clear and pointed into him and pouring into him, your mate matters, and who you align with in this vision that God's going to provide for you matters. And so to that point of truly being an EFM guy, he just shared with and talked about his heart in terms of how his wife, his spouse, they're arm in arm on this vision. And I love just the examples he gave of, bringing your kids into the business and talking about his memories of counting money after stores would close with his dad, and doing the same with his kids. He's talking about bringing his 7-year-old granddaughter on a big cross-country business trip with them now. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, cool stuff for an EFM guy to adopt.
I love that when he was talking about the importance of that decision, who is your mate in life going to be, that he wasn't kind of looking at the choice that he made there and just saying, and boy, fortunately for me, I got lucky and I married well. I think he was really saying that decision is a critical one. So do choose wisely who you marry, and whomever you have married, then make that person the center of your service here on this earth. It's not that any of us should be looking at our mate and going, dang, I could have done a little better on that one. I wish I could go back and get a do-over. No, hey, whoever's wearing your ring, that is the focus of your service as you daily lay down your life.
Well said, McCluskey, because a lot of us get married and there are challenges ahead of us, but we talk about it all the time here, right? It's about our investment and how we move forward with our relationship with our wives. And man, that's like 80% of what we talk about here is investing in your marriages so it becomes something sweet over time.
Yeah, Niemeyer, I love too that you were pointing out, I'd forgotten some of what he shared about how his dad, Truett, included the family so much in everything. So it wasn't just his wife, it was the kids. That story about him being like 7 years old, and he says, I can remember my dad bringing home these big bags of money from the restaurant, and they had dollar bills in them, and we would dump them all out on the bed, and we'd be counting them out and putting all the Georges the same way and all the Abe Lincolns the same way, and just that being part of the family business in whatever degree you could, even at 7 years old, you can bundle the bills up and put the little sticky wraps around them to take them to the bank for deposits and all. I could not help, as a father myself, as an entrepreneurial family man myself, listening there and thinking, okay, here's Dan Cathy. This is second generation. He's telling a story about his dad and the way his dad included family in the business. And I thought, man, what if this was one of my kids talking to some future group of people, 30 years down the road, about what it was like to grow up with me as their dad and the degree to which I included my family in our family business. This was legacy kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I love how he also said that a way to maximize your impact as a parent is to do things in business with your kids, and we talk about that. That was really encouraging.
Yeah, it is neat. And one thing that's interesting is all of us on the screen here are first generation entrepreneurs. So we're trying to create that legacy in our own families. We didn't get to observe that growing up as kids. So to see that played out as a kid that's actually grown up under an entrepreneur and been trained and had those values instilled in them, that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I love what you guys are sharing there. It encourages me and inspires me because to that point, Michael, just that recognition that we were all first generation entrepreneurs, and this piece of legacy that you talked about, Chris, he clearly had and was thankful for that legacy. And so to fast forward 30, 40 years from now and to have one of our kids on that screen sharing, this is what my dad did, I was inspired. In fact, I didn't even share this with you guys, but this morning I take the boys down to breakfast. We're hotel hopping, right? And our breakfast conversation was actually these exact points. It was the 3 M's. And when we got to this piece on talking through, what are ways that dad could involve you in the business? And we're just literally thinking out loud, like, maybe there's some of your work that you could do as in your education, your schooling, where we just have you come into the office while I'm working on something similar. And, we're there in the same room. We're asking each other questions and, we're doing business. I'm writing content for what I'm working on and they're reading or writing or whatever they're doing. But just that challenge of bringing our kids into what we're doing on a daily and routine basis, I think is critical for EFM guys.
So cool that you were having the conversation at breakfast with your kids. Yesterday, Chris Niemeyer, when you posted on Facebook a screenshot of Dan Cathy there in that meeting with all of us on Zoom, first person to respond to it on Facebook was my daughter, Alyssa, who, of course, runs her own photography business, and her husband runs his own website business. And she is the oldest of our kids that's in this small business incubator that I do with the kids. We've talked about it here in previous episodes every single Wednesday night. So tonight, while we're recording this, tonight at 6 o'clock, I'll be phoning in on a bridge line with my 5 oldest kids, and we'll be talking about their business development. Well, there she was following my business colleagues, you guys, and saying, how cool, you guys run with Dan Cathy? Yeah, and we were talking about essentially at a much, 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 much smaller level. We were talking about essentially the same things we're doing right here now today.
Mm-hmm. That's important. Yeah, that is cool. You're already having those conversations. You're already passing that legacy piece on your weekly calls with your kiddos on this incubator you have going on. And really that brings us to this third point, this third life lesson we heard from Dan Cathy about. This other critical decision is our mission in life. Chris, you're exploring the depths of your own kids' mission on those calls, what their skill sets are, what their interests are, what their capabilities could be, and what God has impressed upon their lives. So I love this piece that he talked about. This is big. This is big picture stuff, and exploring who we are in our master and the mission he's called us to. Jamie, what stuck out with you in terms of when he talked about mission?
Having him on that call, just being so clear that they are changing the world through chicken sandwiches and the way they treat everybody and sticking to their core values. It just went back to that first one, the knowing who he belongs to and the fact that he is a steward of everything that God's given him and he wants to have growth. And it just reminded me of the parable of the talents, that we ought to be bold and invest our talents for God and for our family. And just a testament that if we do that with all our heart, all our might, that we can just have an impact in this culture and change lives. People will know that we love God by what we do.
That's powerful, Jamie, because chicken sandwiches is what's led to this multi-billion-dollar fortune that they now have. And it wasn't about the chicken, right? And I feel like so many people get caught up on that. Well, I don't want my passion to be plumbing or to be making widgets or whatever that might be. You can use something as simple as a meal to serve someone really well on a kingdom level. Yeah, I think that's, people beat themselves up. I know I have before when I've had certain positions. Well, this job kind of stinks because I'm not doing something really cool, like being a rock star or putting on a huge event or changing multiple people's lives through speaking to stadiums or something like that. It can be a simple thing that you can offer that can change people's lives. That really stuck with me.
I loved how much their focus on the main thing, keeping the main thing, this mission focus was, he told the story of his dad and the challenges that came early on in his dad's success to, just grow the brand big time. And he said, hey, wait a minute, we don't necessarily want to be bigger. We want to be better. And he focused on that, everything is to the glory of God. Everything is to be done with excellence. Be better. And of course, as a result, they got bigger. But it was because they set a mission that was about doing all under the glory of God to be better. It's like Solomon, praying for wisdom, and then all the other things that accrued to him as a result of getting the main thing. that mission focus I just thought was critical. You remember the big wisdom bomb he dropped with us on mission? Somebody's got to put it out there.
Marry the mission, but date the methods.
Yeah.
Yeah. That speaks to not losing sight of what it's all about, but at the same time, staying relevant, changing and adapting to the culture and to the way things work to be on the cutting edge, but not losing yourself in the process. I thought that was so powerful.
But I love the idea when he's talking about mission is, you each have a purpose. And Michael, to your point earlier about it's not about the widget. It's not about sometimes the service that we as guys might provide. It's the bigger picture of what it allows us to do and being in alignment with the skill sets and the abilities that God's called us to. I think back to one of my favorite movies because of the quotes in there is Chariots of Fire. When Eric Liddell says, I believe God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. And just that idea that, man, you might be a really, really awesome plumber, and the abilities and the doors it's going to give you to provide for other guys' lives or to shine your light in a dark places when people are going through a tough time, whatever that is that you've been tasked with, you get to do it to perfection. Another quote he has in that movie, you can glorify God by peeling a potato if you peel it to perfection.
It speaks to he who is faithful with little will be given much. Focusing in on doing those little things in front of you really well. So then you're tasked with more.
And, I love that depending on the translation that you read, that often reads not just that we'll be given much, but that we'll be placed over much. Your tent is going to be expanded. The areas of responsibility and authority that you can exercise in this plane are going to be increased. Why? Because you've shown faith in attending to the things that were placed in your lap when it was the small stuff. You kept the main thing. You focused on that mission. And as you were about that, more is going to be added to you.
Yeah, I like that, McCluskey. I think he also, shared about that idea that as you're given those responsibilities and you are a good steward, right, of what you have been given, that more will be added. And also the fact that he's, to our earlier 2 points, he's aligned his life in such a way that it oozes with, man, this guy's getting it right. Give him more. He's getting it right in this idea that he knows I'm his master. He's crazy about his mate and his family. I want to expand this guy's territory, right? Have enough margin in your life to make room for the mission and the ministries that you're involved with. I think to the point of EFM, we can't be so busy with our business, so busy with that mission that we lose sight of the mission that he's placed within us as a family man, as a father, as a spouse. And he talked about that, having literally white space in your calendar for the people that matter to you, for the ministries that you're part of. I mean, that's just a good example from a guy who, again, you think about this, like a multi-billionaire, you think he's got like every 5 minutes jotted down in his life, but he's got margin to make the main thing with his family too. So what about you? Have you reconciled in your mind who your master is? As you're married and you have your mate, are you locking arms together, moving forward with the vision that God's given you, your marriage, and your family? And when it comes to your mission, how do you approach that?
Thank you for listening to the Entrepreneurial Family Man Podcast. Visit efmlife.com to connect with us and others like you who are pursuing success in enterprise, family, and marriage.
Eat more chicken.